Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to examine one of history's most pivotal battles. And honestly, we're going to discover how looking through our modern lenses might actually be completely distorting our view of the past. We are talking about the Battle of Jalut, which went down in the year 1260. Now, if you know your history, you know this was the monumental clash where the seemingly unstoppable, world-conquering Mongol expansion was finally halted right in its tracks. It's a legendary moment that quite literally changed the course of the world. But today, we're going to look really closely at the forces that actually stood on that battlefield.
So let's dive right into this. We very often hear the legendary Battle of Jalut celebrated strictly as a triumph of one modern nation against the Mongol flood, right? It's frequently framed as a purely Egyptian epic. But is that the whole story? Well, when we dig into the primary sources and, just strip away the modern political borders that we're so used to seeing on a map today, a much deeper and far more fascinating reality emerges.
Part 1. The Myth of Jalut, Examining the Popular Narrative.
Okay, so the modern telling of this story focuses heavily on Cairo as the beating heart of the mobilization. And to be clear, that is absolutely true. The leadership was undeniably centered there, with Sultan Saif ad-Din Qutuz at the helm, fiercely supported by Prince al-Zahar Baibars. Cairo pumped the resolve, the funding, and the initial manpower into this massive undertaking. But the narrative often just kind of stops there. It paints this picture of a singular modern nation-state fighting off an entire empire. And by doing that, it simplifies a much richer, much more complex, and frankly, a much more impressive historical reality. Moving on to Part 2, the Army of United Diversity. Who actually fought on the battlefield? When you actually look at the composition of this army, the sheer variety of origins is just staggering. It's like a giant puzzle. At the core, sure, you had Turkish and Circassian Mamluks, but fighting right alongside them were Egyptian locals providing immense logistical support and joining the fray themselves. You had fleeing Ayyubid princes who had lost their lands to the Mongols and they were desperate to strike back. You had soldiers from all over the Levant who had been waiting for a unifying banner to rally under. And you had Arab, Kurdish, and Persian volunteers. You literally had warriors from the Caucasus and Central Asia standing shoulder to shoulder with fighters from all across the Middle East and North Africa. This was a vast, united coalition.
Now, to really grasp this whole shebang, we have to understand the Mamluks. These guys were elite warriors of Turkish and Circassian origin, brought in as youths from the Caucasus and Central Asia. Raised in extremely rigorous military and religious camps, they became unparalleled horsemen and fighters. But the key takeaway here is their allegiance. They were sons of the Islamic faith before they were sons of any specific land. They were united by a shared belief system and a shared military brotherhood rather than what we would call a modern national identity. Their loyalty wasn't to a set of borders, it was to the cause.
Which brings us to Part 3, Testimonies of History and Scholars, what the primary sources reveal.
Listen, we aren't just speculating here, and we aren't looking at this through some modern revisionist lens. We have ironclad evidence from medieval historians who documented these exact events. Take the renowned historian al-Makrizi, for example, who wrote, "Qutuz mobilized all of Egypt, so the whole people stood behind the army, heart and soul." This brilliantly illustrates the foundation of the effort. The local Egyptian populace didn't just sit back and watch. They provided the immense logistical and moral bedrock for this campaign, ensuring the army was fully backed, supplied, and highly motivated.
Meanwhile, historian Ibn Kathir provides this amazing direct testimony about what happened as the army moved northward. He states, "The people of the Levant stood with the Mamluks after the defeat, and among them were Arabs, Kurds, and Persians." Think about that. Once Sultan Qutuz freed Damascus from the Mongol grip, these scattered and previously defeated factions didn't just wave as the army passed by. No way. They enthusiastically unified into a formidable force right alongside them. And the collaboration didn't just end when the main clash was over either. Historical records explicitly reveal a highly cinematic detail. When the once terrifying Mongol forces finally broke and began to retreat, it was the swift-moving Bedouin Arab tribes who were deployed to chase down the fleeing remnants. It was just a completely unified, region-wide masterclass in utilizing different groups' specific skills for ultimate victory.
Okay, Part 4, Egypt's True Pride, the unifier of the Islamic world. So I have to ask, does acknowledging the presence of Levantines, Kurds, Arabs, Persians, and Central Asian Mamluks somehow diminish Egypt's role in this historic victory? The answer is an absolute no. Actually, scratch that. It's quite the opposite. Projecting modern, narrow nationalist borders onto a 13th century conflict is a historical fallacy that shrinks a monumental human achievement into a localized skirmish. It robs the event of its true grandeur.
Scientific and historical integrity requires us to distribute the credit accurately based on what the primary sources actually tell us. First, Egypt undeniably provided the vital political and military leadership, as well as the staging ground. Second, the Mamluks delivered the elite striking force capable of matching the Mongols in open combat. And third, the wider region, Levantines, Arabs, Kurds, and local citizens, provided the critical mass, the logistics, and the support absolutely necessary to sustain the entire campaign.
Viewing the battle this way, it definitely doesn't lower Egypt's status. This respectful reframing actually elevates Egypt's historical prestige. It cements its magnificent legacy not just as a strong nation, but as the ultimate unifier. In a time when the world was completely fractured, terrified, and basically falling apart in the face of the Mongol invasions, Egypt was the catalyst. It was the glue that brought an incredibly diverse and previously divided world together to form a single, unstoppable force. And honestly, that is a far greater achievement than simply winning a battle alone.
Jalut wasn't just a border defense, it was a massive turning point in world history achieved by a tapestry of different peoples united under one cause. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider this. When we force our modern political lenses onto historical turning points, what other magnificent truths are we hiding from ourselves? What other incredible stories of shared human triumph are just waiting to be uncovered if we simply look at history on its own terms? Thank you so much for joining me today and keep questioning the narrative.